Brief. You all know who Senator Marco Rubio is. He's really our foremost freedom champion.
It doesn't really belong to us. It belongs to the Venezuelan people through their legitimate government to determine what the future holds. And we're there to support them in whatever they need and ask for. But there really isn't a plan B. There doesn't have to be. There's only one plan, and that is Maduro leaves. And the only thing being debated is what is the format in which he leaves, what are the conditions under which he leaves, when does he leave, and where does he go? Does he leave as a prisoner, or does he leave as an exile? But that he will leave, there's no doubt.
Very much. I wore my tie today, too.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Roger Noriega from American Enterprise Institute.
This is an irreversible process we are on now. Okay? There is no way the U.S. or 50-some-odd countries are going to re-recognize Maduro after everything that's happened. So I would just say 3 weeks is too long. But in the course of world history, 3 weeks is a blip on the screen. These things sometimes take longer, because as long as you're willing to jail, murder people, you'd be surprised at how long people have been able to hold on. But this is an irreversible route. There is no way that he survives, and there is no way that this goes back to the way it was. He will not be able to buy time to escape this time. There's just too much attention now.
Supreme Court, legitimate Supreme Court of Venezuela have talked.
There does come a moment, and one of those moments is coming up right now. It is a violation of international law for the armed forces of a country to deny the delivery of humanitarian assistance to civilians. And that is what they are doing, and that's what they are seen postured to do. And if they do that, they are violating international law. And how those 5 or 6 key military leaders respond over the next week and a half to that question is going to determine where and how they and their families will spend the rest of their lives. This is the most important decision they have ever made in their life, and they're about to be forced to make it.
What do you recommend the United States should do in regards to what happens to Maduro and his...
If you told me tomorrow that the price of Venezuela having a better future is that 5 or 6 terrible human beings get to move to Cuba or South Africa or Moscow for the rest of their lives, I think it's unfortunate that some of them may not face justice, but if it saves the lives of millions of people, that's one of those very difficult trade-offs. But there comes a point where you cross the line and that opportunity won't be there for you. And that's what they're going to have to decide.
Please keep your question in question form and not remarks. We have 2 panelists, and that is it.
First of all, been asked a lot of questions. That's not your question, but a lot of people ask about ruling out use of military force. Listen, the United States has a right anywhere on this planet to act in our national security interest, especially if American lives are threatened. That's the first thing. And just understand, it's not unique to Venezuela. Anywhere on this planet where our national security interests are threatened and or Americans are threatened, the U.S. has a right to react to that. And that's no different in the case of Venezuela. Number 2, it's not my decision to make. I'm not the commander-in-chief. I can only echo to you what the president has told me personally and what his administration has said publicly and repeatedly, and that is there is literally no option off the table with regards to what this administration is willing to do to see this through.
For example, a humanitarian corridor, and called upon the international community to consider that.
As far as the next steps, my number 1 and number 2 priority right now are getting food and medicine to people who are starving to death, to infants who are dying in hospitals, to people who are waiting for HIV/AIDS medications and antivirals that if they don't get, they will die. And that's being blocked. That's our number 1 priority by every way possible, and to continue to call attention to the global community about how these criminals are standing in the way of that being delivered. The second is to continue to find ways to support the legitimate government of Juan Guaido to get the resources they need to begin to frame out what a recovery plan is going to look like for Venezuela's future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Want to go that one?